Hey guys, welcome to this very, very special review. I had a feeling that I should probably get this one out there because, I mean, who doesn't want to talk about this movie? And of course, we are talking about Jaws, a film that needs no introduction, an absolutely seminal classic blockbuster film from 1975 directed by Steven Spielberg. And with me today, you've seen him before. It's not the first time you're seeing him. It's certainly not going to be the last. We have Mr. Zach Burdick here.
Thank you for having me on the channel again.
Of course, man. I just really wanted to talk to someone about this film on camera, because the reason I wanted to review this movie specifically today is because it has been re-released in theaters in 3D and in IMAX. And we were so fortunate to go on National Cinema Day and only pay less than $5 to see Jaws in IMAX.
$3 for an IMAX ticket?
It's unbelievable.
That's a steal.
That's the deal of a lifetime right there. So I was like, we got all my friends together, and I was like, all right, we're going to this movie. We're going to see one of the most timeless and most iconic films on literally the biggest screen we possibly could. And I mean, I gotta say this, I don't know if it's one of the best theater experiences I've ever had in my life, but it's up there. I mean, the crowd was so into it.
Yeah, I was happy that there was actually a decent crowd there when we saw it.
Yeah,
too.
And because like when we saw Casablanca, which maybe I should do a review on at some point, I mean, it was just like absolute crickets in the audience. I was like, what? This is like one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. But I feel like just the engagement the audience had with this film, whether it be like the big moments in the film, like everybody was reacting to it in probably the proper way. I mean, obviously, you probably know the score I'm going to give this film, but I'll save that for later. But yeah, I mean, first I just want to talk about really the first time we watched Jaws. So Zach, when was the first time like you saw Jaws, and what was that experience like for you?
I don't really remember it vividly. I want to say it was probably when I was like 12 or 13 when I saw it for the first time. But I mean, I just thought it was a really entertaining movie. So I liked it a lot. But as I've watched it a few more times throughout the years, I've just come to appreciate it as an actual like film a lot more.
Right. No, I hear you. I actually didn't watch it until I was around probably, I want to say like 17 or 18 years old. It really was one that just eluded me for so long, and I knew it was like, oh, what's this movie about a killer shark, But everyone said, oh, it's such a classic, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll watch it. And then I was like, okay, like I completely get why this is considered such a seminal piece of filmmaking. And the thing, the reason I feel like Jaws not only took off. Well, okay, let me put it this way, because obviously the fear of the unknown is something that is something very terrifying to everybody in the world. And obviously this film, if you know the story, it wasn't actually supposed to happen the way it turned out, where they were trying to get the shark in a lot of shots. You were supposed to see the shark for most of the film, but the shark wasn't working, like the mechanical shark they had, so they're like, okay, we'll just shoot this in POVs of the shark going underwater and like terrorizing all these people. Yeah. And that proved to be one of the happiest accidents in the history of cinema, because I feel like shooting it from the POV, shooting it from something you can't see, makes it that much more terrifying. And my goodness, I forgot like how brutal and sometimes how terrifying this movie actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, they even, I guess this might be a minor spoiler.
Oh, well, we're going to spoil this movie. I mean, come on. This is like an almost 50-year-old movie, so we're going to throw that out there, but continue with your point.
As I was saying, a little minor spoiler, I guess, but they even kill a kid in this movie.
Yeah, they don't hold back at all, and I think that was another reason why this film stood out to me so much. I'm like, they aren't messing around. Like, at all. Everybody's at stake here. And that's the thing I love about it, because this shark, who shouldn't be in the waters, first of all, is a force of nature. Like, you can't control it. It doesn't have any sort of empathy. It's just an animal. It's a killing machine, they even call it in the movie.
Just a wild animal?
Right. And so it has no sense of that sort of thing and that sort of sense of reality, which I just think is incredible, just to set that sort of thing in this environment. But also, I just feel the tension is so much more amplified by John Williams' absolutely timeless and incredible score. Obviously won him the Academy Award for Best Original Score, but as you hear the low droning strings, that dun, 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 dun. I mean, really, it's one of the most iconic themes. It's been sampled and referenced so many times in so many different things, and really stands as one of his most iconic. But man, we gotta give credit to Steven Spielberg, because he had made some kind of noteworthy stuff. Like, I don't know if have you seen Duel?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
That movie's really good. So if you guys haven't seen Duel, check that out. It was a made-for-TV movie. I think the narration holds it back from being a truly great film. But I think that was really the first time where you could see, at least from what I've seen, Steven Spielberg assert himself as a very dominant voice in cinema and having his own very distinctive style. But this movie is where he just launches it to another level, and I think this is why he launched into the stratosphere, and his career took off the way he did, and he became the auteur director that we all know and love today. Because, I mean, there's certain things he does in this film, especially that famous dolly shot of Roy Scheider when he sees like everyone screaming in the water. I mean, it's just so iconic. The sense of style, the way Spielberg introduces characters in this movie, like Quint with the nails on the chalkboard, which
it's an iconic scene.
Oh my! And it's just so unnerving. Like when you hear that sound, like every time, like I'm just like cringing and kind of clenching up every single time I hear it. And honestly, one of the greatest character introductions in film, and obviously the greatest character in the movie. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just love how he portrays these characters and how, because this is I think the reason Jaws works so well is it isn't about it is about the killer shark going around and like terrorizing these people, but it's a very, very human story, and in the way Spielberg captures those very intimate moments between human beings is really what makes this film stand out above the rest of the films in his filmography.
Yeah, this is more about like the actual characters in the movie as opposed to, like you said, just the killer shark.
Yeah,
I think that's why it stands out as one of his best, because a lot of movies obviously tried to copy Jaws.
Yeah, they didn't work as well.
They focus on the wrong thing, I feel like. Yeah. They just focus on the killer shark or whatever. So, yeah. I mean, you have some of the greatest characters in the history of movies, I'd say, in this movie.
Oh, 100%. And I think you hit the nail right on the head there with how, like, people forgot what made Jaws a success. Obviously, that was the sort of spectacle to it, the shark, but it was so much more than that.
But yeah, Roy Scheider's character, I love in the movie. And I kind of like his arc, too, throughout the movie, where he starts off as being terrified to go in the water, and in the end he ends up killing the shark.
Right. So. And it's also just it's so interesting too, because and this is what another thing I love about this film, because I think the script is absolutely pitch perfect, and I think a perfect example of screenwriting where like you'll have these interactions between characters and they might not seem super consequential to the story, but they add so much to the development of the character, like where he's like drunk on the boat with Matt Hooper, played by the legendary Richard Dreyfuss, and he's like saying, oh, you know, like there's so much crime in the city and like I want to make a difference in a small town. And you really don't, you just kind of say, okay, that's his outlook, but you see later on like that's eventually what he does. Like it's so very well layered in that sense, where it's like even these little details that feel so minute add so much to the story. And yet again, if we're talking about like how well developed these characters are, I mean, even little scenes, and I think one of my favorite scenes of the movie, and I'm sure you can probably agree to me, is when he's at the kitchen table and he's so stressed out about the shark and everything that's going on, and then he's just like making hand motions, and his little son's just copying him, everything he does. It just adds
such an adorable scene.
Yeah, it really is, but it's like Spielberg didn't have to put that in the movie.
Yeah.
But yet it makes it that much more memorable and more humanistic. And I mean, so many moments like that, like when when he's like talking to his wife, it's like, oh, you want to get drunk and fool around? He's like, yeah, sure, you know, like stuff like that. And then like when they're when the kids are on the boat, and he's like saying, get away from the boat, because he's still so nervous about everything. And his wife's like, no, they're fine. Like they're just over there. Nothing's going to happen. And then she opens up the book, and she sees the picture of the boat getting attacked by a shark. It's like, you listen to your father. You get your ass out of that boat. I mean, it's just so hysterical stuff like that. And I mean, yet again, so many scenes of just absolutely sheer poignancy. And I feel like. Also, and I think this plays, I'm just going to tie this all into like one little bit here, because I feel like this really ties into the narrative of all these characters, because there's some characters that feel kind of two-dimensional for us, like the mayor, for instance. Like, he's so insistent about keeping the beach open because he's such a capitalist that he's like, we need to make money on the 4th of July. Like, this is not happening, even though like 3 people had already died. But he's like, no, we have to open the beach. And it's so annoying because at first it seems like, oh yeah, like, oh, he's just out for the money. He's just the money mongering kind of villain twirling mustache character in this film. And then of course you have really the scene that I just think is maybe the most terrifying, is when that kid, I believe his name is Alex or something, when he gets chewed up on that raft. You see the blood. Like this movie's brutal. Like, as I said, they do not hold back. But that scene where they, like, after they catch the tiger tooth shark, and his mom, just in kind of like her funeral garb, she comes up to Brody and slaps him in the face and says, you knew that there was something out on that beach. Like, a girl already died, and you still kept the beaches open. I think that is maybe the most sobering moment in the entire film, besides maybe later when obviously the beach gets attacked again on the 4th of July, or everybody's in the water. And I just love the way they absolutely subvert your expectation, where they divert it to these two who have like the fins, right? These 2 kids kind of pranking everybody, and then it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf moment, where then it's like not that anybody didn't believe the girl was screaming it, but it diverted the attention away to the actual danger.
Right. Yeah.
And yet again results in another guy. I mean, just that shot of like the leg falling.
Yeah. They show body parts coming off.
Yeah, it is just. Oh my goodness, it's so intense. But
someone's missing his eye later.
Oh, dude, and also I have to mention the jump scares in this film, because like there were a couple of people in front of us were like throwing themselves back in the seat. It was kind of funny, but I actually like was startled at a few like, especially when Matt Hooper he's going and he finds the guy in the boat and he just like jumps out of nowhere and you're like, holy shit, like.
Yeah, that scene scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it.
What about the next few times?
I mean, I kind of saw it coming.
Okay,
so,
sure.
But it's still unsettling.
Right,
and give it that.
And I mean, so there's quite a few scenes like that, which just absolutely still shock me to this day. But yet again, going back to like the characters and how they flesh them out. I mean, after that beach attack on the 4th of July, you see the mayor all shooken up in the hospital. He says, "My kids were on that beach." Mm-hmm. And then you realize it's like, yeah, he is kind of like this money-mongering capitalist, but he's human too.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's the moment where it's like, okay, everything in this movie was just so well thought out and so well executed. And also, we got to talk about, I think the other 2 best characters in the movie, and obviously the 2 other main characters besides Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider, is obviously Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and Quint, played by Robert Shaw, who I think should have been nominated for an Oscar for this movie. Though I know it was a tight year with Rocky and... Oh, actually, no, that was the year after. Never mind. But still, I think that it was a tight year when it came to supporting, but man, he gives one of the best supporting turns in like any movie I've seen.
Yeah, I feel like Richard Dreyfuss's character is kind of like a comedic relief in a sort of way, because I mean he's pretty funny in the movie. Sure. I mean, Quinn is too. I would say, and I love the dynamic between the 2 of them. The tension is so great, and that's the thing. There's always so much tension in this movie, and I love how even in the most tense moments, Spielberg is able to insert a little bit of humor and still make it feel seamless. And I think Matt Hooper is a great character as well, because obviously you see
like you understand how smart of an individual is, even though he's like comes from like this Ivy League background, and they hint at his family having a lot of money. You're like, why does he have all this gear to hunt sharks? But you really understand his passion, and also he's, as you said, hysterical. Like I love that when he's chatting with the mayor, it's like I'm not going to argue with someone who's going to be like a 5-course meal or like stuff like that is just so great. And obviously he has a great arc too in the story, because like the whole time he's like. Doesn't he, you know, because I think Quint kind of gets on, oh, your hands are soft, you're a city boy, you know, that sort of thing. But by the end, like when he gets down in that cage and like takes the shark head on, I mean, that's really him putting himself in the face of danger, which he perhaps didn't do quite to that extent beforehand.
Right, yeah. And even though it might not have worked out for him completely in the end there.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought it was a great character arc there for him.
But also, I mean, the humor in this film, as we were mentioning, is just absolutely hysterical at the right moments when it needs to be, and just endlessly quotable, man. I mean, this is probably one of the most quotable movies of all time, I think, without question.
Yeah, I mean, of course you have, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the most famous line.
It's probably the best quote in the movie. And of course you got Quinn was like, here's to swimming with bow-legged women. Dude, one of my favorites, it's so underrated, is when Matt comes in and he's like bringing the wine. And that's also a great scene between him and Brody and his wife. But like when like his wife's like talking about Brody's fear of the water, he's like, isn't there like a clinical name for that? He said, yeah, drowning. But yeah, I mean, to me though, I mean this movie's amazing, obviously, but I think the scene that really makes this film on another level is the scene when they're on the boat at night and they start talking about their scars, and Quentin and Hooper are like comparing, and just the humor that they inject in it, like when Matt like opens his shirt and he's like, you know, Marianne Moffat, and he's like pointing to his heart. It's like, she broke my heart, you know, stuff like that. It's just so funny. Yeah. But the way the conversation slowly shifts into something so much more horrifying, of course, because you get Quint telling the story of the USS Indianapolis and how they went to deliver the bomb to Hiroshima and how the guys fell in the water with the sharks. I mean, that whole monologue is one of the most arresting, one of the most engrossing, one of the most heartbreaking, one of the most beautiful monologues in the history of cinema. Like, how did he not get nominated just off of that?
That's crazy. But yeah, just the way he describes the whole situation, just everyone in the water huddling together, and just how he would describe how the sharks would be picking off people one by one. And just describing like their eyes are black like a doll's eyes.
The eyes rolling over white. Man. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I think he mentions like it was like over 1,000 people were in the water and like 300 something came out alive. So
it's just such a it
brings even more tension to the shark that they're trying to hunt.
And then you completely understand his character. Like, you understand why he is the way he is, the way he uses humor. You know, it kind of is, I guess, sort of like a defense mechanism in some way. And it's just incredible the way right after that, like, they seamlessly shift into them singing on the boat. I just feel like that, yet again, I mean, I talk about how human this film is, but that is literally the epitome of human emotion and just interaction. I think that it is one of the most perfectly executed scenes in the history of the film medium. And just tonally, I think it just ebbs and flows so perfectly and so seamlessly. It really is, I think, without question, the greatest scene in the movie.
Yeah, I would say so.
And it's a movie that's already iconic. And I mean, of course, just that final fight with the shark, and of course right before when Brody's like throwing the stuff and he's like, hey, chump some of this shit, and then the shark pops up. I mean, it's just such an iconic moment in cinema, and then of course the line we mentioned earlier. But yeah, I mean, really, Brody's arc, as we mentioned, the way that he ends up being the one to kill the shark feels so earned and so justified. And I absolutely, dude, I think Quinn'S death in this movie is one of the most haunting images I've ever seen in any when he gets
he basically gets bitten in half by the shark.
and you feel so terrible because you're like, oh my goodness, I love this guy so much. Like, it really is such a well-developed character and such one of the most painful deaths in any movie, especially when the blood's like oh my goodness, coming out of his mouth
at the end.
Oh man. But just that beautiful moment between Brody and Hooper at the end where he's like, oh, Quint? No. And them just swimming back to shore, it's like, you know, I was always scared of the water before. I can't imagine why. It's just so simple. Obviously, when he kills the shark, it's just such this rousing moment. But the ending right there, it's just so simplistic, yet it has so much depth, so much poignancy, and really brings the whole story together in a way that I don't know if any other director really could have. I mean, I genuinely think that I've watched Raiders so many times. I've seen E.T. quite a few times. Like, all these movies, and I think that this is Spielberg's best film. And that's saying a lot because obviously this man has like 7 masterpieces under his belt at least, and to say this is the best one.
Quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what really put him, because to call this movie just the first blockbuster film I feel is very deductive, because yeah, I mean, it changed the way movies were made obviously, but I feel like people forgot, as kind of like what you were alluding to earlier, they forgot what made it truly great in the first place.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, I think this is easy, you know, as I said, the score. And the first time I'm actually giving this on the channel, Jaws is unquestionably a 10 out of 10 film. It's absolutely perfect. I have no flaws with it. I mean, you could say the mechanical shark looks... but it's only in a couple of shots where you really see it, so I don't really knock the movie for that. I still think it looks
pretty good.
It doesn't look bad.
Yeah.
No, just in a couple of shots it's like... But, I mean, come on. This is one of the most timeless, one of the most iconic, one of the most influential movies ever made. And just imagine if Spielberg didn't make this movie, like, where will we even know who he is? Like, I don't know. I mean, I think we would, just because the other films are so great, but I feel like Jaws was what really set him up for the rest of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 10 out of 10, too. This is, like, one of my favorite movies. Probably 20, in, like, my top 10 maybe even, so
that's hey, that's fair. I mean, it's in my top 20, but I really can't knock anybody for having it higher. This is a movie that just gets better every time you see it, and I'm so glad I saw it in IMAX, because this was definitely the best time I saw it.
Yeah.
And
what a treat.
What a treat, and I'm so glad. I just want to give a thank you to Regal and all the other theaters participating in that. And also, yeah, guys, this is going to be around till the end of the weekend, so if you have time, I mean, it's going to be a little bit more pricey, but it's absolutely worth it, so please...
Especially if you haven't seen it before.
Especially, I mean, there were quite a few people in our cohort who hadn't seen it, and I was like, guys, it took you this long to see Jaws? But even most of them said, yeah, I mean, this is not disappointing. Obviously, if you're watching this review, I just spoiled it for you, so sorry. But really, I mean, I feel like most of you clicking on this video have seen Jaws, so let us know in the comments what you think about Jaws. I obviously feel like we might share the same opinions on the matter with a film this good and this iconic, but I still would love to hear what you think about it. And if you like what you're seeing here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more reviews like this coming down the line very, very soon. And of course, Zach, I want to thank you for joining me today. It was a pleasure talking about this movie, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, guys, until next time, we will see you later.
See you later, guys.